In this life, there are two universal truths. Dead men tell no tales, and women never stop talking. So it should come as no surprise that one of Appalachia's most infamous ghost stories is about a ghost that returned not just to say how she was murdered, but who murdered her. Today we're going to talk about the curious murder of Elva Zana Hester Shue, better known as the Greenbrier Ghost, the ghost whose testimony led to a murder conviction. And if you like tales of the supernatural and the macabre, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you for watching. Our story begins in 1897 near Lewisburg, West Virginia in Greenbrier County, with the discovery of the body of Zana Hester. Her husband, Edward, was a well-liked blacksmith in the town. He had sent a neighbor boy over to check to see if Zana needed anything from the store, but when the boy arrived, he found Zana dead on the floor. Upon hearing about his wife's death, Edward Shue rushed home and immediately sent for someone to get the local physician, a Dr. Knapp, to come and do a full coroner's report on his wife. And Knapp did a full coroner's report, claiming he found no signs of foul play and listing the cause of death as everlasting faint. AKA a perfectly healthy 21-year-old just fell over dead one day of a heart attack. Perfectly normal, nothing to see here, case closed. It was customary at the time that after a death, the women in the community would get together and clean the body, dress it, prepare it for burial, do some cooking for the family. While the men in the community would get together, build the coffin, dig the hole, and actually go through the act of burying the body. They'd probably also stand around in grass-stained white New Balances talking about whatever dad stuff dudes talked about in the 1800s. Probably horses. But Edward would do something weird when he would go against tradition and prepare and dress the body himself. He chose to dress Zana in a very stiff, high-collared dress. He also folded up a scarf or handkerchief several times and kind of packed it in between Zana's neck and the side of the coffin for some reason. And then to top it all off, he would tie a large bow around Zana's head and under her chin, and then at the funeral he just kind of stood beside the body and wouldn't let anyone get near it. But even with all this effort to keep people away from the body, there were several people who reported that her head looked kind of loose on the body and flopped around in weird ways anytime they had to move the body around. But once she was in the ground, that was it. She was buried. She was gone. Case closed, right? Because Zana Hester would return. Zana's mother, Mary Hester, claimed that her daughter returned to her as a ghost 3 or 4 times, and each time she returned gave more and more details about how she died, claiming that her husband murdered her by strangling her and breaking her neck. And Mary Hester would then turn around and tell several people throughout the community about these ghostly encounters, and this story spread through the county like wildfire. Because it's not every day that a ghost comes back from the dead, let alone comes back to solve her own murder. And people in the community remembered how weird Edward acted in the days following the death of Zana and how weird he had acted at the funeral. So this kind of made sense to a lot of people. One of the people who were sympathetic to Mary Hester was the prosecuting attorney of Greenbrier County, who wanted to get to the bottom of it once and for all, and he actually sent for Dr. Knapp to get a full coroner's report of what had happened. And when he went to get the full coroner's report, Dr. Knapp was like, yeah, whenever I went there to, do the autopsy and examine the body and all that, Edward just sat there holding on to his wife's head and wouldn't let me fully examine the body, so I just wrote first thing that came to my mind down on the documentation and left. And everyone just kind of stared at him like, You did what? To which he was like, yeah, you don't expect me to like actually touch a woman, do you? That's gross. They have cooties. So with this revelation that there was never a proper autopsy or coroner's report done, they realized, oh crap, we're gonna have to dig her up. And when they exhumed the body and did an actual proper investigation and coroner's report of the body, they found that she did have a broken neck and a crushed windpipe that would suggest murder by strangulation, and Shu was immediately arrested. And after Shu's arrest, like more and more weird details started coming to light, like the fact that he'd been lying about his name the entire time. His actual name was Trout Shu, not Edward. He'd already done time at the West Virginia State Penitentiary for stealing a horse, and he had been married twice before, with at least one wife dying mysteriously from an accident, I'm finger quoting as loudly as I can, where a brick just hit her in the face and killed her instantly. And while being held in jail, Shu was very vocal. He was super comfortable talking to reporters and journalists, claiming that they didn't have enough evidence to charge him with anything, which is a weird thing for an innocent man to say. And he would say that he wanted to be married 7 times. He wanted 7 wives, which that right there, okay, he was already starting to lay the foundation for an insanity plea, because who possibly, like 1 wife, that's a little, but like 7? What? And at this point, things weren't looking good for Mr. Shu. He kept self-incriminating, which is never good. He had all this circumstantial evidence against him, and members from the community remember how weird he had acted in the days following his wife's death, so this trial was just gonna be a weird one overall. When it was time for the trial to go to court, the prosecutor was sure that they had enough evidence and testimony of people who'd seen Shu acting weird in the days after his wife's death that they could reach a verdict, but the judge specifically barred the prosecutor from bringing up any talk about the ghostly visits of Zana to her mother. He didn't want any ghost stories in the courtroom, which leaves the question if the prosecution was barred from bringing up the ghost story and Zana herself didn't take the stand, then how did the testimony of Zana get included in this case? And the answer is the defense brought it up in the trial. Okay, the defense was like, okay, our client is kind of screwed. Clearly he did it. Clearly he hasn't been helping his own case by not shutting up to reporters. So what if we did something crazy? What if we called Zana's mother to the stand and tried to discredit her and claimed that the only reason they found all this circumstantial evidence is because the mother is a liar, pants on fire, crazy person that talks to ghosts, and that if it wasn't for her lying, they would not have found any evidence of murder. And so they called Zana's mother to the stand and basically flat out asked her, are you a liar, pants on fire, crazy person that talks to dead people? And everyone looks around like, are you seriously going to ask that? And the judge was like, well, with all due respect, Mrs. Hester, it is the 1800s. You are a woman. The gentleman did ask you a question, so are you a liar, pants on fire, crazy person? To which Mary Hester did the most gangster thing possible and retold the story exactly like she had done dozens of times before about her daughter returning to her after her death to tell her about how her husband had murdered her. And to absolutely no one's surprise, the jury found Shu guilty. 1 dead wife, shame on you. 2 dead wives, shame on me. 3 dead wives, we're just gonna lock you up in jail because you're definitely guilty of something, bud. In the end, the ghost of Zana was never seen again. And Shu would die just 2 years into his term at the West Virginia State Penitentiary, and he would be buried at the Whitegate Cemetery. For those of you who don't know, the Whitegate Cemetery is the tomb of the unclaimed inmate. Anytime inmates would die at the West Virginia State Penitentiary and their bodies wouldn't be claimed, because let's be honest, no one would want them, they were buried at a special cemetery right outside Moundsville. So why has this story become so famous within ghost story and true crime communities? Because at the end of the day, it is truly the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of stories. Oh no, there's a ghost story in this true crime story. Oh no, there's actual people and a murder trial that actually happened inside this ghost story. And it's a great introduction. If you love true crime and you hear this story, you're probably also going to look into some of the paranormal events in it. And if you love the paranormal, but you don't really like true crime, you'll probably at least dig a little bit into the court case behind this ghost story. And because of that, it's one of the greatest ghost stories of all time. Thank you for watching, especially if you've made it this far. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was actually one of the first videos I ever did on this channel. I did it Halloween of 2017? Was it that long ago? Maybe 18, maybe 2018. But yeah, it was one of the first 10 videos I ever did on this channel. It's been a lot of fun revisiting it, learning some new things about the case. Let me know down in the comments, what are your thoughts on the Greenbrier Ghost, either from a paranormal or a legal standpoint? Let me know. What other weird ghost stories should I talk about in the future? Should I do a whole video about just the old funeral customs of Appalachia? That is something I'm fascinated in. There's a really good chapter about it, I believe in the 6th or 7th Foxfire book, and I'd love to talk about that with y'all. But until next time, happy Halloween. Hope y'all have a great and safe one. Don't forget to stay wild, stay wonderful. I don't know what this guy was thinking, wanting 7 wives. That is completely insane. But I'll talk to you later.